sometimes we have to remember that a servant is not greater than than their master. As in, we as disciples or followers of Jesus, we are not greater than Jesus himself. If the world hated Jesus, the world is also going to hate us. In John 15, chapter 18, it says, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it will love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. Jesus is telling us that if the world hated him first, the world is also going to hate us, regardless of what we think. A servant is not greater than their master. That's something I learned. I mean, that's something I also struggled with understanding and like taking to heart. Jesus was the servant of all. The Lord was the servant of all. If we cannot expect the world to love us because he says in John chapter 15 that he chose us out of the world, meaning that if the world hated him first, the world is also going to hate us just as much as it hated him. So we really have to reflect on that and like take that to heart, that if the world hated him, the world is also going to hate us, since we are his chosen people. Verse 21 says, they will treat you this way because of my name, as in Jesus' name, for they do not know the one who sent me, meaning they do not know Father, they do not know God. So if the world will hate every single disciple of Jesus, that means the world will hate us as disciples and followers of Jesus because they hated him first. And that's something I learned, and that's something that I had to take into heart, or something I had to reflect on personally. John chapter 15 verse 2 says, or John chapter 15 says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. So the only way we can bear fruit is by remaining in Christ, is by remaining in Jesus. We cannot bear fruit without him. And if we don't stay in him, then we cannot bear fruit. And it says in verse 2, he cuts off, as God, he cuts off the Father. He cuts off every branch in me, which is Christ, that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes. So if we remain in Christ, we're going to be pruned. And if we don't remain in him, you might be cut off.